Welcome to the Totally Insensitive podcast, where we give our real takes on the entertainment industry, politics, pop culture, and more.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Listen, my whole family loves it, man.
They're the first thing I turn on.
Think you can handle it?
Yep, I'm ready.
Well, shut up and sit down, because the show starts right now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Totally Insensitive Podcast, Season 3, Episode 1. So this season, we will be doing sort of a debate type module. There will be 3 episodes focused on some sort of topic, and then the following episode, the 4th episode of the month, will be a debate. I or you, the viewer, will choose a genre. So this month's topic is politics, political theory to be exact. So we will be talking about this month some sort of political theory. I've chosen 3 already, and we will discuss the 3 points, and then on the last episode I will debate with 2 other individuals who have some sort of background in what's being talked about, and you guys will choose who won the debate. There's some funny stuff mixed in here and there, but for the most part it'll be extremely factual. And we'll leave the opinion-based comments until the debate. So this month, as I said, we're going to do political theory. So not necessarily the form of government or politics as it exists in the real world, but the theory of it and a little bit of history on how it came to be. So this month we're going to do democracy, communism, and just for fun, feudalism. So this episode is based on democracy. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll list some pros and cons. And so let's get into this. So democracy, it's so how it's defined is a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. So what this kind of is saying is that the people rule, the people make the rules, the people run the government, run the country, and either all the people or representatives of the state. Well, this says it, all the eligible members of a state. So when you go back and you think about when democracy and democratic ideas first started being developed, you think of like Athens and Greece. You think about our boy Aristotle out there coming up with crazy ideas. But you think about the times back then, and in certain places, some people weren't deemed eligible members of society. It doesn't apply to Sparta. Sparta had its own nonsense going on, but for the longest time, up until the 1900s, like women weren't allowed to be involved in government. So that was kind of part of democracy when it first was theorized back in ancient Greece. So I touched on Aristotle. There's individuals who are kind of the forefathers of certain ideas. So, some of the forefathers of democracy were, Aristotle, Pericles, and the one that they teach you in school is John Locke. So, you think of these ancient Greek, ancient Roman, and then John Locke, who I believe it was mid to late 1700s out of England, was coming up with these ideas. And England's not a great place to have ideas at this time. They're really focused on colonizing and global domination. But so the initial, theories of democracy was that democracy is a social contract between, those who make a community and, the community. So the individuals within the community and the people ruling are the same person, and it's kind of this general notion and idea that the people that are in charge of me are me, and we're the same, and I can trust them. There's like a really good level of trust between the people that are in charge and the general community. In theory, they're the same. But it's kind of based on these pillars. There's these central pillars. This theory of democracy kind of breaks off into different tangents, which I'll get into. But there's this theory of the pillars of democracy, which are the consent of the governed, which is that the people that are being governed want to be governed and they want this system in place, and that the majority rules, that 90% of the people outweigh 10% of the people, the majority. And you see that now in a lot of political discussions, especially in the US, about the majority versus the minority. And there's kind of this misconstruity that minority means, they're of different ethnic background. And that's kind of the case, but if the whole country's of different ethnic background, if it's a melting pot, if you will, then the majority is that melting pot. The majority is that vast amount of diverse ethnic background or cultural background or what have you. So yeah, the central pillars of a democracy, majority rule and people consent to being governed. And if you don't believe anything I say, well, just take it from my boy Aristotle.
Hello, I'm Aristotle. Democracy will definitely work in like 200 to 300 years. Okay, bye.
So yeah, thanks, Aristotle. So I'm kind of going to go into the pros and cons of democracy. The pros are pretty quick. This is something that we're surrounded by democracy nowadays. So we kind of hear these things all the time, especially in media, and we're taught these things in school. But when I get into the cons, we kind of touch on it in everyday society, but I'll go into detail on them. So, for the pros, democracy's for the people. It's by the people. Everyone's involved. There's, this imposition of equality. There's no single person has all the power. Everybody has the power. Everybody makes the rules. But in this sense, the pro is, because everybody makes the rules and everybody has the power, everyone's kind of obligated to care. If you don't care, that's when things get messy. And that kind of goes and dives into the cons for us. So the cons is that there's a morality to democracy. There's we have in our society elite theorists that spend months, years, decades thinking about theories like democracy and how they should be applied to society as opposed to how they are or how they will be. So these elite theorists kind of argue against the egalitarian forms of democracy, which is like the high levels of citizens participating, that these high level citizens produce bad legislation because they have a different agenda than the majority. They are, in fact, the minority running the majority. But because they have so much money and power and, I'll say backing, but that's not really the term I want to use. Basically, because they're so elite, they're running the government. They're running the democracy because, well, who's going to tell them no? They can buy everybody out. And this kind of leads to bad legislation. And this kind of goes into the next thing, which is, it's called interest group plagiarism, where it's essentially just bribery by the politicians. They have some sort of agenda, whether it's known or unknown. And, this is let's say this is their focus group, and they want to influence this focus group to vote for them or push through a piece of legislation or whatnot. Because they're so elite, they have this sense of bribery. And you don't necessarily have to think about bribery as money. It could be political favors or what have you. Back then, it could have been, I'll assassinate Archduke Ferdinand or whatever. That's a tangent. We won't get into that. But yeah, there's this idea that, politicians with power will bribe their way into more power. There's also the elite theorists talk about neoliberalism, which is kind of all these topics are kind of related, but neoliberalism is kind of like this theory that the elite individuals will expand the power of the government for their own interests due to the public just not paying attention, just not giving a damn. And this theory is decades old, centuries old. But it all really boils down to the fact that the elites will expand their power and expand their government because the majority isn't paying attention. They're being distracted by something. So the government's being expanded by these elites. And the last thing I want to touch on is the self-interest, which, kind of wraps everything together. It's that because democracy is run by the individual, you have to think about, how the individual behaves in the general public. So it's human nature for an individual to act primarily in their self-interest. There's no way around that. I mean, think about how you go through your day or how you go through your work week or whatever. Yes, maybe here and there things are littered with, oh, I got to do this for so-and-so. I have to help with this. But at the end of the day, it really just boils down to your self-interest. If you don't care about something, you're not going to do it. There's some sort of give and take. So the morality of this and how this applies to democracy is that those who govern us will have some sort of self-interest. While they will be appointed because we want them there, their interest really lies in what they want and how they want to complete it. That's why you see a lot of politicians, not just in the US, but everywhere. They'll give you, this is my running platform. This is what I'm going to get done when I'm elected. And not a lot of politicians, when they get elected, complete that task. Now, yeah, there's a lot of things in the way, but most of the time, that's because they don't really care about that certain boiler point or topic or bullet. There's a level of self-interest there. So that's my breakdown of democracy. What I found, what I looked up as, for every one of these episodes, my sources will be linked in the description. I'll post the script that I used so you can see exactly what I read and said and whatnot. We will be posting that on our website, insensitivenetwork.com, in the blog, and there will be transcripts for every episode. But yeah, that wraps up this episode. Next week is communism, so stay tuned for that. And, make sure you go on YouTube, hit the subscribe button to our channel, Insensitive Network, so you can see the videos, see the, silly little quips. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we will see you next week. Peace.